Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Big news, Supreme Court, they denied New Mexico's challenge to their vaccine mandate. This I think, kind of a big deal. If you remember, the state of New Mexico wanted healthcare workers to get the vaccine. And on Tuesday, the Supreme Court said nothing. They just rejected the challenges put forth by workers in hospitals, by prisons and all these folks, right wing nut jobs. Just said no, mandate stands. Now, kind of wondering, how is it going to look for on the federal level? Now, understand, the court has repeatedly denied bids from states like New York and Maine, who have state mandates that say, look, you got to get vaccinated, or there's the door. So on the state level, the Supreme Court's saying, perfectly constitutional. So all of those people running around going, oh, hair on fire, it's unconstitutional. That's not what the court's saying. Now, interesting. January 7th is the day that Biden's vaccine mandate will come up for oral hearings. I do expect that to get shot down. I kind of do on a certain level because it is a crazy court. But we've had federal vaccine mandates in the past. So will John Roberts' balls and strikes, stare decisis, I believe in decided law, will that remain? Or, will they chuck that and go, no, we're states' rights people, and it's the states that have to decide this? Going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, I do find it interesting that in New Mexico there were two women, I guess a nurse is what they're saying, who was fired after refusing the vaccine, and I'm not sure who the other worker was, but I guess both of them were nurses. I guess now what does this mean? Now they argued that it violated their constitutional right to bodily integrity and to engage in one's chosen profession, and it doesn't. It doesn't. You have the choice not to get the vaccine, or you have the choice to not work in these facilities. You can go somewhere else if someone else will hire you. And this is where I've been saying for the longest time, capitalism is going to have to figure this out. And, our Supreme Court has decided, at least on the state level, vaccine mandates by the state are constitutional through their silence. The fact that they didn't even pick it up says we're moving on. So good stuff there, I guess, I think it is. I think we need it. I think if you're dealing with vulnerable populations, we should be protecting people. Today, Joe Biden came out and said he's going to extend the student loan payment pause. I guess this is going to happen until May. As you know, we've got this huge bubble, this huge crisis that has just for not new, but for years has been growing. And a lot of people are saying, hey, look, we can't afford to get students back to paying these. We can't get people paying these loans back right away. In fact, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Representative Ayanna Pressley put out a joint statement today praising the president for extending the pause until May. They went on to say that, we need to do more. Extending the pause will help millions of Americans to make ends meet, especially as we overcome the Omicron variant. We continue to call on President Biden to take executive action to cancel $50,000 in student loan debt, which would help close the racial wealth gap for borrowers and accelerate our economic recovery. And I'm going, I don't ever remember Biden saying 50,000. I remember 10 during the campaign. 50 seems like a lot, and it'd be interesting. I think it's a huge step for him. Would it be a good thing for some? Absolutely. Would it be helpful for the economy? I think probably really It would help people start their families and all that, and all the good things. My problem with the statement, and maybe it's just because I'm an old white guy, or maybe it's because I'm someone who seeks to kind of draw us together, or at least not divide us any further. But did you need to add the racial component to that? I just don't see it as helpful or tactically useful. It would help close the inequality gap. It would help cause, it would do a lot of things. But I look at this and I look at it and understand, this is not that I don't disagree that there's a massive racial inequality gap in this country, but did you need to add that to that statement so that you can have the other side go, see, look, that's all they care about? And go to the people that it would help and go, hey, look, all they care about is this. It just seems tactically not useful. Now, I don't see President Biden, I don't see it happening. I have some friends who are hoping because they're in pretty deep in student loan debt and need it. But I don't see $50,000. Maybe 10 if they can. But here's the thing, and here's been my problem with this from the beginning. And don't think I'm not sensitive to the needs of the people who borrowed money over the last 30 years to get an education, because I went through it. I attempted to go, right out of high school to get an education, just couldn't afford it. It was one of those things where I either had the money and no time because I was working 3 jobs, or the time because I was unemployed and no money because I was unemployed. So it was one of those things where there was no right path. Because when I turned 18, quite frankly, when I turned 18, my grandfather said, "There's the door. Good luck. Call your grandmother." So at 18, I was basically on my own. And in his defense, probably the best thing he ever did for me. Made me grow up, made me take responsibility in ways that I probably would not have. And I probably wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for that kind of tough love mentality. But we can debate that another day. I look at this as my problem in saying, okay, we're going to forgive $50,000 in debt is that what are you doing for the next student? When you have the cutoff date, what happens to all of the people going forward? Okay, we're gonna undo this little bubble. We're gonna alleviate some of this, but what happens going forward? My problem is, again, the problems aren't going away. The system isn't going away. The systemic screw job of students not going away. I've said from the beginning, in all fairness, if you borrowed money, you have to pay it back. And I think the federal government should buy up every student loan and have it repaid at 0.0001%, whatever it costs to administer the loans. Whatever it costs to do the paperwork and all of that, that's what you repay. You took $10,000 out, you pay $10,000 back. None of this, some of the stories that we've seen where people have taken out $20,000 and end up paying $100 back because of fees and penalties and interest. That is insane. So my first step would be to buy up every student loan and have people pay back what they borrowed, and take that money that they're then using and put it into fixing the system moving forward, and making sure that the next generation doesn't have to be saddled with a lifetime of student loan debt. That we repair a system of higher education so that a child growing up today, they will be able to go as far as their intellect, their talent, their will, their passion, as far as that will take them. Because something has to be done on this student debt crisis. Unquestioningly, something has to be done. I like the fact that the Democrats are talking about it and have actually an idea, and kind of a bold one. And I would not, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be against helping people who are, this is where I struggle. Do you go, the lawyer making $100,000 a year, do you forgive $50,000 of his student loan debt? I don't know. And this is where we get into the weeds. But that school teacher that's making $30,000 a year took out $50,000 in student loan debts. Yeah, I think we have to do something there. And maybe you tie it, as we've done in other times, to public service work, to different kinds of work. I don't know, but something has to be done. And Democrats are talking about it. Now, conservatives have a plan, and this has always been their plan. Just ask college dropout Madison Cawthorn or high school dropout Representative Lauren Boebert, who neither want to do anything on college costs. In fact, Cawthorn, interestingly enough, at the little conservative hate fest, said, "I think you should homeschool. I was homeschooled all the way through. I am proudly a college dropout." He encouraged all of the people in the audience to drop out of college, mostly college students, drop out, unless they were going to be doctors or lawyers or something. Drop out, go do, I guess, what he did, get drunk and I guess get into an accident and then figure out how to become a congressman. Figure that one out. Now, Cawthorn did spend a single semester at Patrick Henry College back in 2017. All D's dropped out. That wasn't happening. It's been reported that he did apply to the Naval Academy where he was rejected. And look, most people, I'm not beating him up for that. Most people get rejected from there. But here's the thing that gets me. This is their plan. Lauren Boebert's against it because I guess high school is already free. Why should we bother with any more schooling? What we know, and it's getting lesser, especially when you start talking about the massive costs of a college education. But the sad reality is to get into the middle class, solidly into the middle class, you need to get a college degree. And, Northwestern did a study that looked at labor statistic numbers, the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, that pointed out, quite frankly, someone with a bachelor's degree, on average, earns about $65,000 a year. Someone with a master's degree, somewhere around 78. Someone with a doctorate, somewhere around 98. Pretty good living. They also point out that someone with just a high school diploma, like Madison Cawthorn, would make about little under $39,000. And a high school dropout like Lauren Boebert, somewhere around 30 to 31. So economically, a college degree still pays dividends. Again, depending on what it is you're getting. If you're getting underwater basket weaving, chances are not going to do really well. I would pay to see it, but I don't know a lot of people would. This is where having conversations about what we need economically, what kind of students we need, what kind of fields they go into, that's important. But the reality in this moment, and this is where you go, there are people on both sides of the political divide. Some have ideas, some don't. Some good, some bad, and some, insane. The Democrats, where I give them credit is at least they're trying. At least there's something where they're going, we recognize a problem. Now, you didn't do enough over the years to alleviate the problem, and this is not new. We've been screaming about this for decades. And Republicans did nothing but make it worse. So now is a time where something has to happen. And these pauses are helping. But at the end of it, there still has to be a solution. And it can't, in my view, and this is where I will be upset, it can't be a one-time fix. Okay, we did this, a minor reset to make everyone politically happy, and then it happens again and again and again and again and again. And maybe you get lucky down the road and they go, oh, we've got to do another forgiveness thing. Or maybe they don't. And this is where if we as a country are going to believe that we need education, we need an educated populace, we need smart people, we want good citizens, then we got to invest in that. I want to believe that educated populace, that good citizens, active, engaged, critical thinkers are going to move us away from insanity. And also I look at Madison Cawthorn, who I guess during the same Turning Point USA conference went on some, and I was going to play the clip and I just decided I can't tolerate Madison Cawthorn's voice. He's one of those kids that, I got to imagine when he was in school, he was probably the one everyone wanted to smack. That kind of snotty, just annoying, but this time on a religious high horse, And this is my problem with the hyper-religious. This is my problem with the preaching class, those who feel that they need to proselytize at every turn, and that they and they alone are the carriers of the faith and the arbiters of what is faithful and what isn't, and that God is always on their side. So when they talk about you are the righteous and you have dominion over this, or you have power for this, or it's always for them and them singularly, not you, not me, not any other person who may believe in the same story, may believe in the same religion, may even sit in the same pew. But they alone are the powerful one, and they are the ones that are unquestioningly the deciders. But he was talking about, we're going to take the country back, and the radical left wants to, destroy our country, and all this stuff. They radically change our country, and we need to get back to our founding values. That was his pitch, and he said, "We, patriotic Americans, were born for such a time as this." I love that flowery language. We're going to face some dark times as a nation. I genuinely believe that. I think we have an opportunity in the next 4 to 6 years to prevent kinetic force. Oh, good for you. Movement. Countrymen on countrymen from ever meeting. Although I have no doubt we would be victorious if that would ever happen. And I'm going, wait a second. Did you just call for a civil war and then say, oh, well, I don't really think we want one? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we would win. I mean, seriously? This is, again, like the thing we talked about yesterday with Jesse Waters, saying, kill shot. Get him when he's surprised, ambush him. But do it over with this. I don't really mean, this is the kind of stuff that's really, really scary. He goes on to say that it's time for us to stop being sheep and to stand up and be lions. The radical left should be terrified of who we are. The radical left should be terrified of what we are going to do. What are you going to do, Madison? Scary times, folks. We'll take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1859. That was the day John Brown was hanged in Charlestown, Virginia, in what is now West Virginia. He had been sentenced to death on charges of treason, murder, and insurrection for his role in the raid on the United States Federal Armory at Harper's Ferry. Brown and 21 abolitionists intended to seize the arsenal there, then build a free settlement in the Appalachian Mountains. From there, abolitionists and free people of color would wage a guerrilla war against the slave labor system throughout the South. Convicted on November 2nd, Brown resisted plans for rescue and prepared to die a martyr. And on this day, John Brown wrote his last statement. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but with blood. I had, as I now think, vainly flattered myself that without very much bloodshed, it might be done. He was marched out of the Jefferson County Jail through a crowd of onlookers that included Stonewall Jackson and John Wilkes Booth to the gallows where he was hanged. While many abolitionists distanced themselves from his actions, they defended him and memorialized him after his death. Frederick Douglass remarked many years later, his zeal in the cause of my race was far greater than mine. It was as the burning sun to my taper light. Mine was bounded by time. His stretched away to the boundless shores of eternity. I could live for the slave, but he could die for him.
Old John Brown's body lies molding in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured out to save. And though he lost his life in his struggle to free the slaves, his truth is marching on.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
John Brown's body lies molding in the grave.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Representative Katie Porter said it's no wonder why economists are cutting their forecasts for the U.S. economic growth following Senator Manchin's comments. She said that the Build Back Better Act combats inflation and invests in what we need for a strong economy we must forge on. And what's interesting to me, and this is, again, shows how important I think the Build Back Better plan really is. The United Mine Workers of America actually came out and called on Joe Manchin to pass the Build Back Better Act. And I don't remember, and it's been a lot of years, I don't ever remember the UMWA ever taking a public stance against Joe Manchin. Well, it's not actually a stance against him. That's a bit far. Maybe a bit too strong. Let's use critical. I don't think I've ever seen the UMWA be critical of Joe Manchin. I think that's and I guess for good reason on a certain level. But there's a lot in this that would really help their members and the folks in Kentucky, which is why I think they have taken this, what I argue is historic position in standing up and saying something to Manchin. And here to share some thoughts on how this could help the good folks of West Virginia, I've asked Navin Nayek to come talk with us. Navin is the president and executive director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. AmericanProgressAction.org is their website. Navin, thanks for taking time for us.
So great to be here.
So I'm looking at this statement by the United Mine Workers, and I think it's historic. In all the years, and I've been doing this show 16 years, I've been a union activist 30 years, I don't think I've ever seen the UMWA come out and say something to Joe Manchin this publicly.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's particularly striking about it is when Manchin announced, I guess 4 days ago on Sunday, that he was not going to support this, that he was done with Build Back Better. He really tried to hide behind his constituents and use, West Virginians and his inability to explain to West Virginians his vote. And the United Mine Workers are probably one of the most iconic and important constituents that Joe Manchin purports to represent. And for them to come out 48 hours later and say, we encourage him and urge him to get back to the negotiating table because this bill is really important to our members, I think was as polite a way as them saying, you can't hide behind us as a reason for not supporting this bill. We support this bill. And if you want to represent our members and do right by our members, please get back to the table and figure out how to get this passed.
Yeah, because as they point out, there's some stuff in there to help with health care for their members, to help with some black lung stuff. Look, I've marched in the street with miners in Charleston, West Virginia, and Fairmont, West Virginia, when they were trying to take their retirement. This is going back 10 years ago, trying to take their health care. And I marched with these folks, and they depend on this. These are desperate, sadly broken people that an industry chewed up and spit out. And they need this kind of help. And it's not that they want it, they need it.
Yeah, and I think that's actually, I think it's really emblematic of why it's so perplexing and frustrating that Joe Manchin walked away from, I honestly believe, the most consequential bill he has ever had the chance to support in his tenure, not only in Washington, but in politics. I mean, we're talking about a bill where the average family in West Virginia making $40,000 with 2 kids would stand to save $10,000 a year on healthcare costs, lower drug prices, childcare costs. Like, there's never been a bill that Joe Manchin has had the chance to support where West Virginians would see that kind of savings. And that's, he's basically trying to argue the opposite, that, prices are going up. This is the wrong time to make these kinds of investments and pass this bill. In fact, it's the opposite. These families, middle-class families, West Virginia families, have been squeezed not for a year with inflation. They've been squeezed for decades. Yeah. We have seen prices of prescription drugs, of childcare, continue to rise while wages have been stuck. And here you have a bill which is really, we don't talk about this enough, but it is a really transformative bill in terms of rethinking what it means to build a strong economy. We've spent 40 years building a strong economy in this country at the expense of working people by providing tax cuts to the wealthy and corporations. This bill says, no, we build a strong economy by investing in working people, by helping people get into the middle class by lowering costs. And I think at the end of the day, that's to me the reason I think Joe Manchin has to come back to the table. I just think he'll never be able to not only forgive himself, but I think his political career will really struggle in a state where they need this kind of support and investment.
Yeah, but I have friends who live in West Virginia, and the story that they tell me is this is being framed in such a way that it's not really going to come to them. And this is the other argument, that this is for those urbans. This isn't for them because they would never help them. And understand, West Virginia is one of the poorest, and you know this, one of the poorest states in the country. This would be, your words, transformational. This would be something that would massively help, especially when you give some of the numbers. When you look at 1 in 3 people, I get, what is it? 1 in 3 people in the state are on some form of disability. And this would help them in massive ways to stay in their home and get care and get, programs. It's just enormous. And yet none of that is actually being talked about.
Right. I mean, I think listen, I don't blame average voters, because there's a lot of cynicism and there's a lot of reason why the average American is cynical, and this is unfortunately a problem on both sides. Like, there have been a lot of promises for many, many decades. Every year people campaign on things like lowering prescription drug prices, and the average American watches their drug prices go up. Every year people have campaigned on, bringing jobs back or raising wages, and it just hasn't happened. So I appreciate where people are cynical, but man, this bill does these things that, drug prices, let's just take that alone. It caps seniors' drug prices at $2,000. And right now, the average senior spends more than $6,000. So you're talking about a $4,000 savings for people who are disproportionately on a fixed income. And that is a huge, huge investment. It caps the price of insulin at $35 a month. And, this is a drug invented decades ago. And it should be. And yet
let me stop you right there, because yesterday, we talked at length about Manchin's comments or potential comments. He isn't actually quoted directly of that, if we did this, people would just spend money on drugs. And my producer put out a tweet of, something of, I didn't buy drugs with my money. And someone tweeted back and said, I did. I bought drugs with my money. It was called insulin, and I paid $450 for it. And that right there to me is emblematic of what this bill could help solve for that one person and for millions across this country.
Huge. It's just the number of people who spend hundreds of dollars a month on a life-saving drug like insulin. I mean, and we've had heartbreaking stories of people we've worked with who have lost kids because their kids were rationing their insulin. They couldn't afford to take a full dose. And so they were rationing their insulin and died as a result of it. And that, unfortunately, is way too common a story in this country. And for the first time, again, something that politicians have promised, Joe Biden and Democrats have put something in front that is going to help the millions of diabetics in this country who rely on insulin, and cap it at $35 a month. And that's just one example of, how meaningful this bill. The child tax credit is another one, Rick, we talked about, which is, the expanded child tax credit, which, puts $300 extra in people's pockets. That is again, it has been transformative. We have seen poverty in this country during a pandemic cut in half. We used to, we have more than 40 million Americans who live below the poverty line. That number has been cut to just above 20 million in the last few months, and overwhelmingly because of the child tax credit. That's a big difference in a state like West Virginia that is unfortunately one of the poorest in the country. And so we know these policies can make a difference. We've been fighting them for years. We're one vote shy of actually getting these things implemented. And so we really do hope that Manchin, who I really do think has the right intentions, I think he's in politics because he actually wants to make a difference in working people's lives. And I think this is really an opportunity for him to come back to the table and get something, to my mind, one of the most consequential economic bills in 50 years in this country.
I hope you're right. I want to believe that. I do. I truly want to believe that. But every day over these last couple of months, it's been a real struggle. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Navin Nayek. He is the president and executive director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. If you want to check out the work that they do, AmericanProgressAction.org is their website. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. Now, I did want to ask you this because, look, there's so much in this. And we've run through a bunch of stuff. The tax credit for kids that has cut child poverty in half. The prescription drug thing that's going to help seniors and people on insulin. And we didn't really get into the help with child care, the universal pre-K stuff. There's all kinds of stuff in this. Is that the problem, that this is so big, that the messaging was terrible, that we spent so long fighting over? Was it 6 trillion? Was it 3.5 trillion? Was it 1.7, 1.5, 1.8? We were fighting over math when we weren't spending the time and pointing out, hey, there's a family out there that spent $450 last month on insulin alone, that this bill could have helped get money for their kids. They could have got money for their kids, and the insulin would have been capped. It had made their lives better. Did we waste too much time fighting over numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no the good news I'd say first is, like, it's amazing in the sort of polarized times we live in. This bill has been sitting out there for, almost 8 months, and it's still net popular in this country. You get 60 to 70% of Americans across the country still supporting Build Back Better. That's a really hard thing to do. And honestly, Republicans have struggled to attack this bill. The only real attack they can make is, the tired old trope of it being a radical socialist plan, or, trying to attack the dollar figure, even though it's fully paid for by finally asking the wealthy and corporations to pay their fair share. So, and when the irony is that when people hear that corporations wealthy are going to pay for this, the bill gets more popular, right, not less popular. So I think that's good news. If you compare it to 10 years ago when we were trying to pass the Affordable Care Act, that bill really was underwater by the time Democrats passed it. But I agree with you at the same time that there's so many good things in here that we've lost a simple story so that the American people really understand it. People like this bill, but they can't, unfortunately, say what it's going to do or be specific about how it's going to help them. At this point, though, we're long into this. Democrats have got to come together, pass this thing, and then we've got plenty of time then to go and sell it, to make sure the American people actually know in very tangible ways how they're going to benefit from this bill. And I think there's a lot of great stories, depending on where you live in this country and who you are going to, really feel the benefits of this bill. And I think Democrats then have a job to go and sell this. And but none of that matters if Joe Manchin doesn't get back to the table. And that's why I just think the consequence of him walking away for this, we're not going to pass something like this anytime soon. Right. Obviously, we don't talk about this enough, but Republicans to a T are voting against this and strongly opposed to it.
And this is where I wanted to go next. Before you chop me off at the knees again, this is where I wanted to go, because we've spent all this time talking about Joe Manchin, the failures of the Democrats to move this along, and we haven't talked about the party of family values, the pro-life party, the people who tell us how much they love the children. And not one of them, not one Republican is going to vote for this on any place in the Senate. Why aren't we focused solely on the fact that our political system is so badly broken? Because it is popular, like you said. Overwhelmingly, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everybody wants what's in this, yet not one Republican is going to vote for it.
I know, it's really astounding. And I think it's hard for the media not to get excited, unfortunately, about the Democrat on Democrat, opposition, and that becomes the narrative. I am hopeful that if we pass this bill, it'll become a much stronger contrast. It's encouraging that everyone but one Democrat voted for this in the House, and that draws a really stark contrast. Republicans are voting against lowering your prescription drug prices, and Republicans are voting against lowering your childcare costs. You just go down the line with this bill. And I think this is the thing that we're going to have to get better at telling on our side. It's not just that they oppose these things. They are interested in and actively working in making a lot of these problems worse in many cases by offering tax cuts to corporations.
Yep.
Remember what Republicans did when they were in power? They gave a $2 trillion tax cut to corporations like the pharmaceutical companies and oil companies that are gouging people today. And I think the other thing that we just have to get more clear and sharp about, it's not that our political system's broken, although in some cases there's no question it is. We have a party that just doesn't care. I mean, Republicans they do not care. When you and I hear that story of the family who lost their child rationing their insulin, and there's an element of, wow, we've got to do something. That's a fellow American. We should go help and figure out how to help that family. Republicans, they don't care. They are just heartless. When they hear those stories, they're worried about, what can we do that's going to harm the pharmaceutical company? They're not out there looking out for average Americans. We have all these mounting problems in this country: low wages, poor job quality, climate change we didn't talk about, all of these things. You can't go through any of them and really tell me that Republicans have a compelling solution. And I think at the end of the day, they're just the party that doesn't care about these things.
Yeah, well, I've often said that it's not so much right and left, Democrat, Republican. It's about top and bottom. It's about the very wealthy and the powerful and the big corporations against the rest of us. Because it seems all of the things that are popular in the working class, much like everything in this Build Back Better plan, never seems to go anywhere. And they seem to go to that place where all good ideas go to die, and that is the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, and I think that's why people are cynical. I think this is why it's so important to my mind and why I can't help but feel optimistic, because the alternative to me is really discouraging. We finally have, and I think unfortunately it took a pandemic, it took Donald Trump to get Democrats to unite. This is not easy. We have a 50-50 Senate and put together the kind of bill that I think working people have been asking for and hoping we would pass for decades now. And if we don't get it done, I really do worry that, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to feel really let down again and very frustrated. So I think it's imperative that we do kind of show the American people that there is a party out there that's looking out for them.
10 seconds. Do you believe this gets passed? Do you think Manchin does come around? Is this going to happen January? Because I fear if it doesn't get done by March, never going to happen. We're going into election season with nothing. 10 seconds. What do you think?
I think that's the right timeline. I think President Biden's got to stand up there when he does the State of the Union in February or whenever it lands and tout one of the largest economic accomplishments for working people in decades.
Good stuff. Navin, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Thanks so much. Great stuff.
Good being here, Rick. Thanks so much for having me.
Good stuff. Navin Nayek, President and Executive Director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund, AmericanProgressAction.org, the website. Quick break, right back. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1910. That was the day a catastrophic fire broke out in the Chicago Union Stockyards. It claimed the lives of 21 firefighters and was considered the worst in the line of duty tragedy, with fatalities in fire service until September 11th, 2001. The fire broke out in warehouse number 7 of the Morris Beef Company. By the time the fire was extinguished, 26 hours later, 50 engine companies and 7 hook and ladder companies had been called to the scene. They arrived by horse-drawn steam engine and trucks. Fire hydrants nearby had been shut off previously over concerns of freezing. This, coupled with animal fat and grease throughout the warehouse, contributed to the quick spread of the fire. Railway cars and other buildings also surrounded the warehouse. This made it more difficult for firefighters to access it. Soon after they arrived, the building exploded and a wall collapsed on the firefighters. Their comrades frantically rushed to dig them out of the scorching hot rubble with their bare hands. But the explosion had caused a second fire in a nearby warehouse. It took another day before the debris had cooled enough to resume recovery efforts. Various causes for the fire have been considered, from faulty electrical outlets to the bursting of ammonia pipes. 19 widows and 35 orphan children were left behind just before Christmas. Directly behind the Union Stockyard Gate at the intersection of Peoria and Exchange Streets is a memorial statue commemorating the tragic loss of firefighters' lives. At the time it was dedicated in 2004, the names of 530 firefighters were carved along its base.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, quote of the day makes me shake my head. This guy's sitting in Congress as we speak. Quote of the day, I think you should homeschool. I was homeschooled all the way through. I am proudly a college dropout. Unless you're becoming a doctor or a lawyer or engineer, I highly encourage you to drop out. Yeah, that is Madison Cawthorn. The same guy who said, hey, we can fight a civil war and we'll win. He's sitting in Congress. Sad, sad stuff. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the craziness going on in our Congress. I've asked our good friend, former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, to come share some thoughts with us. Joe is the host of the F Silence podcast. You can find that at fsilencepodcast.com. Joe, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, I always like being with you. Do I sound okay?
You sound okay. Let's jump right through this. What do you think of Madison Cawthorn's comment? Everyone just drop out of college, Joe.
Not goes by, Rick, that it doesn't painfully sadden me how stupid and ignorant my former political party has become. It's just men.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite remarkable to me just how far off the beaten path they have gone. But I look at Cawthorn, who I guess he's made his mark as one extreme thing after the next. The college comment wasn't even the worst thing he said this the other day. The other one being, hey, we can fight a civil war. We'd win, but we can fight it.
Yeah, yes. Let me stipulate. Cawthorn is nuts, and Boebert is nuts, and Green is nuts, and Trump is nuts. Jordan is nuts. Go down the line. I agree with you. This is the Republican Party, Rick, has become a radicalized anti-democracy party. It's not an easy thing for me to say. Now, having said all of that, wholly different topic about how divided this country is. And if you and I are on radio 64 years now, is this still a united country? I don't know.
I guess it depends on who you're talking to and in what forum and when. I want to believe that working people have all of the same problems. I want to believe that families are struggling and that they want their government to help. I want to believe that those things could unite us, but clearly they're not.
No, look, I was saying when I was in Congress 2 years ago, well before Trump, I said, Rick, that I thought the United States was irrevocably divided. I think we have, I don't believe that we as a people anymore, Rick, believe in the same basic principle of what we want America to be. And maybe that's okay.
Do you think that's okay, that there are things we don't agree on, that we're constantly going to have this kind of push-pull, kind of a banana republic feel, that we're going to go from ideological extreme to ideological extreme? Do you think that possible?
Yes, I don't know how long we can sustain this, but if we can't sustain it, Rick, then there's a split up. Then there's an amicable divorce. I mean, you and I are friends, but you and I disagree on most matters of public policy. I think you and I generally agree on the basic founding principles of this country. But when it comes to the role of government, you and I are a million miles apart.
Yeah, but you don't think we could come to an agreement on how to move forward?
I think if you put Rick Smith and Walsh in a room to try to solve the country's problems, we could need to, because you're a man of good faith and I'm a man of good faith, even though we disagree. But we are not emblematic, I think, of the country at large. The right wing right now, they're gone. And right now, they don't even believe I believe the left is pulling us too far to the left. And I think most Americans in the mess right now.
Yeah, well, we'll see where that goes. And that's not why I asked you on, but it was interesting that it's an interesting little side swipe, and I'm glad we went there. I wanted you to come on to talk about Jim Jordan, who today has been asked to come and be interviewed by the January 6th committee. And I assume he's going to do the same thing that Scott Perry has done and refuse to cooperate. But I'm curious your thoughts on Jim Jordan being asked to come and be interviewed.
Hell yes. Look, let's remind ourselves, Rick, an insurrection. We're a year removed from a violent attempt to overthrow an American election. Jim Jordan can help us get to that. But like Scott, like Mark Meadows, like Donald Trump, like Kevin McCarthy, they will make zero effort to help us investigate what happened. Again, Rick, this used to pain me because Jim Jordan and I were best friends when I was in Congress. I don't even know the guy anymore. He doesn't even democracy anymore.
Yeah. See, for me, I look at, when they didn't want Jim Jordan on the committee. One of the things I said back then is I said, no, I want Jim Jordan on the committee because I want to be able to turn to him while he's there and say, so what did you do on January 6th? I wanted him to be in that position where you can go, look, you were part of this. What did you do? And not be able to go, well, I'm not going to cooperate. You're here. If you're not part of this, if you're not going to help us move in the right direction and figure it out, then what were you doing?
2 points. I agree, Rick. I think Speaker Pelosi made a fundamental mistake when she wouldn't allow Kevin McCarthy to pick, or the Republicans to put some of their picks on the committee. I think it delayed the whole process. Here we are a year later, and nobody who incited the insurrection has been held accountable. I agree with you. If the Republicans wanted Jordan on that committee, he should have been put on that committee. Right. He should have become a witness as well. But we come back to the fundamental point, Rick. Our democracy was attacked a year ago, and one of our major political parties has no interest in getting to the bottom of that. That would be the Republican Party.
Well, they know what the end is. They know what they did. They know the crimes. They've got it written down. They've got PowerPoints, Joe. They know exactly what they did.
Right. I'm sorry. You're right. They don't want the American people to know the truth, which is why, again, the story is, I don't care why Scott Perry doesn't cooperate. I don't care why Jim Jordan doesn't cooperate. The story is they're not cooperating in an investigation on an attack on this country. I think this committee should use every tool they've got, subpoena his ass, and if he doesn't, I have a subpoena, hold him in contempt.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, especially Scott Perry, because I've always viewed Scott Perry as somebody very dangerous. And this is where we will probably disagree. Even when he was a big Tea Party love child, I said this guy's dangerous because he's on all of the worst policy positions possible, but he's on the outside, has an impeccable military career, general, good-looking guy, doesn't seem like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Louis Gohmert or any of the extreme crazies. But policy-wise is right there. And we see this in his willingness to participate, from what it looks like, to participate in the attempt to overthrow our election.
And that's what's fascinating to me, Rick, because 8, 9, 10 years ago, you would have said almost all of that exact same thing about me. Tea Party extremist Joe Walsh.
But you're not that same guy. You are not that same guy you were 10 years ago.
Well, no, but per philosophy, I am. I'm still, when it comes to my political philosophy, I'm still a proud limited government Tea Party guy, but it shows you how radicalized the Republican Party has become, because you and I might have disagreed on the debt or what to do about the border, but these Republicans now, they don't even accept basic American election. Radicalized.
No, and there's somewhere that shouldn't that be uniting us as a country? Shouldn't what's left? I guess we should start there. Is there any part of the Republican Party left? Because I hear people saying, no, Rick, you got to reach out to the Republicans. You've got to bring the sane ones along. Are there any left?
I think it's important. You and I have talked about this before. 74 million people voted for Trump. I think 30 to 40 million are hardcore megaheads. The majority of those people cannot be reached, Rick. Right. I try to reach them every day and every week, and I'm able to move some of them, but most of them will not be reached. I think it's important to try to convert people in the Republican cult. But right now, Rick, to save democracy, we have to outvote them, period.
No, and that's a perfect spot. Do you have any hope by the story today that came out of South Carolina Republican Tom Rice, who now says that he regrets voting against certifying 2 states' electoral votes for Joe Biden? Is there anything that you read in that as, maybe the death cult is the death grip is loosening off the party? Do you read anything into that, or is this just one guy going, I made a mistake?
It's just one guy, an outlier. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, I think Rice from South Carolina also voted to impeach Trump the second time. So I think he's an outlier. Look, I don't mean to depress you and your audience, but I talk to hundreds of Republican-based voters every day. Their support of Trump and the big lie and January 6th was actually a patriotic event. Their support on these things has solidified.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because this brings me back to Jim Jordan. This brings me back to Scott Perry. This brings me back to Roger Stone. This brings me to all of those people who, if they truly believed what they were doing under the dark of night, if they truly believed that their PowerPoint was accurate, that history was on their side, the Constitution they were carrying in their pockets for years was on their side, wouldn't this be something that they would be proud to step forward and go, damn right I did this? The Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. Wouldn't that be this moment?
So they're either liars or cowards, because you're right. If they really believed it, and the insurrection happened, where were they in the insurrection? Then why was Jim Jordan scared? Why were they hiding under their desks when this is really what they wanted? They're liars, they're cowards, and they're manipulating the base, which is just so dangerous.
No, it's and all of this talk, and I don't know if you've noticed what's going on in this little thing in Phoenix that they're doing. The rhetoric, the kind of the Jesse Waters, we're going to ambush Fauci with a death kill kind of rhetoric, this thing with Cawthorn, a civil war, the kind of rhetoric from Boebert about, we've got God's dominion and we can overtake our enemies. This kind of theocratic, very vicious, violent rhetoric. This is not good for a country that is in the moments it's in.
No, and I think you and I say it almost every time we speak. It's going to get worse, Rick. I firmly believe it. It's going to get worse. Look, this country is as divided now. Let me rephrase that. We've not been this divided since, I believe, just before the Civil War. I think things are going to get uglier. I think, Rick, the Republican Party is a dying, shrinking national political party. And in its final days, last 10, 20 years, it's desperate. This is like the last ugly gasp of a major political party. I think it's going to get ugly. I think it's going to get violent.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what you got a cage cornered rat, and now they're cornered because of this committee. And as I said yesterday, when I tell my kids, if I ask you a question, I already know the answer. And I think Benny Thompson and the committee, by going to Perry, by going to Jim Jordan, I think they already know what they did. It's just a matter of giving them the chance to dig themselves deeper into a hole, and I think that's what they're doing.
The problem, Rick, is the committee will hold hearings next summer. They'll come out with their report next summer. It's just too late.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will have any. There won't be one Republican base voter who believes anything this
I'm with you.
Puts out.
Yeah.
And right now, it'll only fire up the Republicans even more, and they look like they're going to take control of the snow.
No, I'm with you. Joe, I appreciate the time as always. Good talk with you. I hope we can do it again real soon. And maybe at some point, we'll be able to have that experiment of sitting down and actually talking about something policy-wise.
I would love it. Merry Christmas, Rick Smith.
Back at you, brother. Have a great holiday. Love having
Thanks.
you. Our good friend Joe Walsh, former Illinois congressman. And look, we've had these conversations a bunch of times, and he's right. We have our differences, and we're going to continue to have our differences in the policy realm. But I do believe if you really sit down and you really do hammer things out, then we could come up with an agreement. Now, the scary thing in everything that he said there, at least for me, going to get worse. These folks, they mean business. The moneyed interests funding this stuff, they mean business. And you could go, well, they're outliers. They're just the small number of people, and they are. They're a large size room of people in an entire country of some 330 million people. But these people are funded. They're enraged. They've been fed the rage candy from birth, most of them, because these are the kids of the Tea Party. The question is how much worse does it get? And to think that a sitting member of Congress, can you imagine a sitting member of Congress saying, "Drop out of college. We can fight the Civil War. We'd win." Man, if you're not enraged, if you're not ready to get to the streets and to organize, to make sure you're at least registered to vote and commit to voting next time around, I don't know what else gets you there. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. That's all.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 2005. At 2:35 that afternoon, the Transport Workers Union in New York City called for an end to their 3-day strike. The union represented 34,000 workers who kept the city's buses and subways running. The Metropolitan Transit Authority was demanding a rollback of pensions and health care benefits for these workers. They decided to go on strike. They timed the strike to begin right before the Christmas holiday. At 3 in the morning, public transportation in the city ground to a halt. During some of the busiest shopping days of the year, millions of commuters had to find alternative ways to navigate the city. Mayor Bloomberg and other city officials were outraged. They ordered New York City firefighters to douse the bonfires along the picket lines. The firefighters, for the most part, refused. City officials called the picketers thugs in the press. In New York, a rule known as the Taylor Law prohibits strikes by municipal employees. The city moved quickly to bring the full weight of the Taylor Law down on the strikers. On the first day of the action, a judge ruled that the union would be fined $1 million a day. The international leadership of the Transport Workers Union called for an end to the action. In the face of such pressure, the strike ended 3 days after it began. But the workers made some gains.
For the first time, this predominantly African American and Latino union received Martin Luther King Day as a holiday. They fought back the concessions on pensions, but they lost ground on health care. The union membership rejected the contract during the first vote, but later voted for the agreement. In the end, the union was charged $2.5 million in fines. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. That's the number if you got a question, comment, something on your mind. Interesting op-ed over at Newsweek. Hazmat tanker truck driver by the name of Cyrus Tharp. He has a piece pushing back on this political polarization. He said the rich are politically polarized, the working class ain't. And look, this is what I would love to believe the reality, because there's so much in his piece that is dead on accurate. He said that America isn't politically polarized, it's economically stratified. And that is the heart of everything that I talk about. It's not right, left as much. It's not Democrat, Republican as much. It's top down. It's the moneyed interest against everyone else. It's the landed gentry against the peasants. And it's always been that. That's always been how it's gone. But the moneyed class, you know, the Jay Gould quote of I could pay half the working class to murder the other half, we see played out in front of us every day. But he goes through this piece, and I think it's a fabulous piece that we'll get out on social media and hope people will take a look at. He said, you know, quote, you know, if you're working class, you know this. If you ain't, you don't. The only folk dumb enough to buy the polarization nonsense are those who were born at the top of the economic heap. The rest of us are getting crushed at the bottom. Understand for what it is. A for-profit business model with two financial benefactors, corporate aristocrats and bourbon white liberals. I'm not quite sure what the bourbon white liberal is, but you know, I'm assuming that's going to be your economic elite. He says essential workers, the essential worker is the essential American. Statistically and spiritually, we live one common narrative. In a post-NAFTA, post-Great Recession, post-COVID corporate bailout America that asserts that assetless, essential worker of the 2020s is the landless sharecropper of the 1880s, and nothing divides us in the lower class so much as our financial disposition unites us. I wish that quote were true out of the whole piece. I wish this were true, that nothing that they throw at us, none of the divides of race or gender or who goes to what bathroom or, you know, which of history being taught to our children. I wish it were true that none of that's divided us as much as the financial inequality of this country rips us apart. And that should be what unites us. I wish his piece were completely accurate in that. I just don't agree with it. Now he does go on to say, look, you know, I'm the guy that everyone points to that, you know, when things are wrong. He says, you know, I'm the dumb truck driver. I'm the white guy without a college degree. That the white liberal media. Now, what I find interesting in none of this part does he go after the right echo chamber or the corporate media. It's always the liberal side of things, and I'm okay with it because they deserve to get a little beating up too. He says that the white liberal says that he's the reason why America can't have nice things. He says, quote, why are they voting against their economic interest, as the saying goes? But the truth is that voting Democrat has meant voting against my economic interest. And this is where he is spot on accurate. I voted for Bill Clinton, who orchestrated the largest mass deportation of black, Latino, and white working class jobs in American history. I voted for Obama, who orchestrated the largest mass eviction of black, Latino, and white working class homeowners, including myself. And in 2016, I voted for Bernie in the primary and Hillary in the general. And I hoped Hillary would follow through on her campaign to make public college free. She lost. I was ticked. At 41, I knew any chance of me going to college was gone. The rage in this piece, I agree with. He then goes on to talk about how he met an 18-year-old girl who is trying to go to school, trying to get ahead, working 3 jobs, trying to put food on the table because it matches his life. He's 41 years old. He's looking back going, I never had a chance. For me, this is, and I so want what he says about nothing being able to divide us as much as financial issues unite us. I wish that were true. But I look across the political spectrum because he goes into this piece about how truck drivers don't ask each other who they vote for. I don't know which truck drivers he's driving with. When I turned on the CB, the ratchet jaws were going crazy about how much they loved Trump and how he was going to tear everything down. And there are reasons, as he goes into, to like Trump. The fact that some truckers believe Trump made the economy a little bit better. He got credit for the Obama economy that carried over into his years. I gotta wonder how they're feeling, in 2020 when things weren't that great. He does say, look, the Latinos love Trump for some of the things that he's done. And blacks as well, for the inmates that were let go in the First Step Act. Those are reasons to give Trump credit. Things that Democrats were also pushing for, I might add. But the part in this that I think is important is the recognition that in the working class of this country, there are things that we should be agreeing on. And there are things that should unite us. And this is where, in talking with Joe Walsh and how he said, look, on policy issues, we're probably a million miles apart. For a working class in this country, and this is how things used to work. We had a common interest. The idea of Social Security, it used to be the third rail of politics. You heard that a lot. Talking about cutting Social Security was, oh my God, would never allow it to happen. Doing anything to Medicare, never allowed to happen. And yet we let George Bush and the Republicans ram through the partial privatization of Medicare because they sufficiently divided us into the belief that, government was doing it bad. And yet now we look back at the privatized portion of Medicare, and now we're finding out, it didn't work out like it was sold. Surprise, surprise, surprise. It didn't work out as it was sold to us. Like all of the privatization schemes before it, didn't quite work out the way it was sold to us, did it? When they privatized our parking garages, our turnpikes, our water and sewer departments, when they privatized all of the things that we used to hold as the commons, as things that we did collectively, when we sold that off for profit motive stuff, we got burned again, again, and again. And then we have people say, well, Rick, I'm for limited government. I'll be honest, I'm not for any size government. I don't care if it's big. I don't care if it's little. I don't care I don't care the size. I want effective government. I want a government that can get things done, make people's lives better, make sure we get clean drinking water. That would be something, wouldn't it? It'd be great if we could have bridges that don't fall down, roads that don't have giant potholes in them, an education system that gives kids an opportunity to go as far as their intellect, talent, and passion will take them. Sounds like a reasonable system to me. And again, don't care how big or how small. I want effective. I don't want government in my life any more than Joe Walsh wants government in his life. But there are things that I think we have to agree that only collectively all of us can be done. And what mechanism do we use to get those things done? The far right will tell you private interests. That's all they can do it. Corporate for-profit interests. That's it. Or some people on the other side will say, well, we can only do it through government. I tend to lean on government doing it, with private interests involved as well. This is where the public-private partnership stuff comes in. I'm a big fan of public-private partnerships when they go like this. We take public policy, research, we take public monies, and we hire private firms to do the work that we want done. And we do it in a parameter using prevailing wages and certain parameters to make sure that we're not slitting each other's throats for pennies, that we compete on the right planes of doing the best job possible, of having the right parameters so that competition is done in positive ways and not, hey, I'll cheat this guy out of his wages so I can bid less. And that then the public owns the asset. Perfect example. The tale of two bridges. You look at the bridge, the Tappan Zee in New York, the replacement of the Tappan Zee in New York, and the Bay Bridge in California. The Tappan Zee in New York was done with a PLA, a project labor agreement, where everything was agreed to from the beginning, all labor conditions, everything were agreed to and standardized with prevailing wages in place to make sure that everyone got paid a reasonable, decent living wage. Nobody got cheated. And guess what happened? It was done on time, actually done before time, under budget, and complete, and is a phenomenal bridge. The bridge out in California, way over budget, took way longer than they ever thought it was going to. And it's never going to get done because I don't think they can figure out, because of the shoddy materials and poor workmanship, how to actually complete it. They're constantly working on it, replacing, repairing from what I'm being told. But that was all done with, outsourced materials, mostly a lot from China, outsourced labor of, hey, let's see if Joe needs a job. Do we know if Joe can weld? No, but he's cheap. And what do we get? We got a bridge that you got to wonder. And I've said this all the time. I'm a big fan of prevailing wage laws because it builds a local building trades and it maintains a local building trades of people who are going to build your schools and your hospitals and your prisons and all the things that you need as a society. And they're going to walk in those buildings too. The school that was built a couple of years ago in my neighborhood, I want to know that the guy who put the roof on that school, his kid's going to be sitting right next to mine, so that roof doesn't cave in. I don't want some fly-by-night transient corporation coming in and going, oh yeah, we'll do the roof for half price, and then 6 months later it snows and my kid's underneath a foot of snow and a roof. We got to do things in the right way. And this is where class consciousness does matter, in my view. This is why understanding that, we're not all going to be billionaires, that we do need to make lives better. And for me, it's always what it's been about. How do we make working class people's lives better? Understand, we are the majority. Like it or not, the wealthy have all the money. They have all the resources, all the power. We've outprocreated them. There are more of us. If we voted, and if we voted on the things that were truly important. For instance, I don't care what bathroom you go to. I know it's hard. I know this is really hard to accept. America, it's not that important. That issue has been around from the beginning of time, and somehow we didn't destroy our entire democratic process worrying about who's going into which bathroom. Doesn't matter to me. What does matter to me is that we have a policy that's now going to be going away at the end of this month that cut childhood poverty in half. Because we can't get one Democratic senator or 50 Republican senators to step forward and cast that one vote that is needed to make that law stay in place. We've got homeless veterans. We've got so many problems. And yet it's the outrage candy of the day that they keep shoveling into the mouths, into the veins of a large percentage of us to keep us divided. Again, the Jay Gould, I could pay half the working class to murder the other half. And here's the weird part about it is today's billionaires don't even really have to pay because we're almost willing to do it ourselves. Because back to this piece by Cyrus, I want to believe, I want to believe we're not as polarized as it looks. But here's the thing, Cyrus, I know lots of truck drivers. Been doing it a long time. They're as polarized as anyone. I've been in truck stops where people are ready to go to fisticuffs over who they voted for, over which policy. This is, again, one of those moments. The old labor frame. Which side are you on? Sadly, a lot of people don't know which side they're on. And I want to believe it. And my core central belief has always been, it is the economy, stupid. And I love the way he put it in his piece. And because I got to tell you, I love the piece that he wrote for the most part. Sounds like I've been ripping it apart and maybe a little bit, but I love the fact that he does point out some realities and lots of good, solid reality. For instance, he says the poor don't choose where we live. We live where it's cheap. We don't choose where we work. We work where we're hired. We don't choose our coworkers or our neighbors. Poverty chooses for us. That is a movement building rally cry right there, if I've ever heard one. That is something that every working person, just look around you. Did you choose? Did you get a choice? And I guess this should be that dividing point that asks you, which side are you on? Did you get to choose where you live? Did you get to choose the job that you have? I mean, really choose. I mean, a lot of us I fell into the job that I have and I've done for over 30 years because it was the best job paying when I got hired. It wasn't my life's passion. Didn't grow up as a kid going, oh boy, I wish I could throw boxes into a larger box. Never dreamt of it. But it paid a very good living, supported my family, and it's given me good opportunities. But didn't really have much of a choice at the beginning. So ask that question. Did you have the choice? Did you choose who you work with? Did you choose your neighbors? Or did your economics choose it? Did your ability to pay choose it? And I guess that's probably where we should start. I guess that's probably a good place to be. Because as he points out, the sad reality is the boss class, they do none of the work, yet they take all of the profits. And they leave the people that they call essential with no assets, no choices, and no power. And this is where I say coming together, uniting, organizing, joining and forming unions, this is what gives working class people power. And this is why the right and corporate interests are willing to spend billions of dollars to tell you you don't need a union, to fight you every time you think you might want a union, and to pass laws and push for politicians to outlaw your ability to do that as well. If it were good for you, they might, I don't know, not want you to have it? What do you think? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1859. That was the day John Brown was hanged in Charlestown, Virginia, in what is now West Virginia. He had been sentenced to death on charges of treason, murder, and insurrection for his role in the raid on the United States Federal Armory at Harper's Ferry. Brown and 21 abolitionists intended to seize the arsenal there, then build a free settlement in the Appalachian Mountains. From there, abolitionists and free people of color would wage a guerrilla war against the slave labor system throughout the South. Convicted on November 2nd, Brown resisted plans for rescue and prepared to die a martyr. And on this day, John Brown wrote his last statement. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but with blood. I had, as I now think, vainly flattered myself that without very much bloodshed, it might be done. He was marched out of the Jefferson County Jail through a crowd of onlookers that included Stonewall Jackson and John Wilkes Booth to the gallows where he was hanged. While many abolitionists distanced themselves from his actions, they defended him and memorialized him after his death. Frederick Douglass remarked many years later, "His zeal in the cause of my race was far greater than mine. It was as the burning sun to my taper light. Mine was bounded by time. His stretched away to the boundless shores of eternity. I could live for the slave, but he could die for him."
Old John Brown's body lies molding in the grave, while weep the sons of bondage whom he ventured out to save. And though he lost his life in his struggle to free the slaves, his truth is marching on.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
John Brown's body lies molding in the grave.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, this Madison Cawthorn and North Carolina, what the? Seriously, what the? How? Look, I've been following Madison Cawthorn, from the beginning. When he got elected, I didn't follow much of the campaign, but some of the rhetoric was little incendiary, little out there. This most recent speech, oh my gosh, this is a guy who's completely leapt off the sane wagon into whatever depths of insanity you could possibly imagine. Drop out of school and join the Civil War, I guess, is this latest spiel. Wow. Here to share some thoughts on just how crazy and maybe how we get this guy the help he needs by getting him out of Congress. That's why I have asked Josh Remillard to come talk with us. Josh is a candidate for North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. That would be, for those who don't know, that would be the district that Madison Cawthorn is currently the representative of. Josh, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, man, thank you so much for having me on again. This is it's always a pleasure being on here and chatting with you.
So I got to look at the most recent comments that have come out of this Turning Points, hate fest, which is just, look, and I used to think CPAC was bad. This is CPAC on steroids. Am I getting the comments right? I didn't get to see the entire speech. I've seen clips of the speech, but basically the message is, hey, you college kids, drop out of college and join the Civil War that we might win.
Yeah, I was really blown away by that, by his comments. I initially I'd only seen like the last portion of his speech, and then I was told there was more to it, so I went through and watched it, and I just continually paused it because I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're right. He did call for a second Civil War, a second time. This is the second time he's called for it. And he's talking. I think in the beginning of the speech, he's talking about the Christian patriots working to influence our institutional government. So now he's talking about encroaching that barrier that our founding fathers had cautioned us against. There's supposed to be a division between religion and politics. And he's saying, no, just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and barrel on through it.
No, this is scary, Josh. And this has been part of my problem with the Republican Party for a very long time. This is not new. It's just that the rhetoric has gotten much more heated, much more, hey, let's go and take on the enemy, and much more public. I mean, this is stuff that they used to, say to each other. Now they're broadcasting this. I mean, the fact that he came out and said, it's time for us to stop being sheep, Josh, to stand up and be lions. And this whole religious exceptionalism idea that they are the chosen and then the rest of us who disagree with them are somehow the enemy. This is really heated, scary rhetoric. And you combine this with some of the other rhetoric that's come out of this little cabal of crazy. Jesse Waters and the ambush, the kill shot comments. We hear a lot of this kind of veiled violence that really isn't veiled. They want this stuff to happen, or at least it seems that way to me.
Yeah, it's so dangerous, and I want to say that I don't think that Madison Cawthorn understands the gravity of his position as a sitting congressman in D.C. The things that he says carry weight. They carry weight. I mean, you just look back at January 6th. The other interesting thing too is that he defended nationalism in his speech. I think about an hour and 40 minutes into the speech, he says, being America first means that you're a nationalist. And he says, unfortunately, that term, gets misconstrued a lot. And it's unfortunate because then it becomes dangerous and deadly. So then this offended me significantly. So I went back through and I grabbed a couple of definitions from Merriam-Webster. And I'm trying to figure out what is misconstrued, because the first definition, it says that there's a feeling that people have a loyalty to and proud of their country with the belief that it's better and more important than other countries. And the example that it uses is the war was caused by nationalism and greed. So I don't understand what's misconstrued there. I mean, nationalism equals Hitler, which equals Nazis, which equals the Holocaust. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Now this kind of flippant kind of call for war. We get this a lot from people who have never actually balled up their digits and thrown a punch. I've said for a very long time, the second we stopped letting little 5-year-old boys beat each other up in the sandbox is the second this country went to hell, because we then forgot what it was like to get hit in a fight and said, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that right away. I look at someone like Cawthorn, who seems to want to be rushing those college kids that he's advising to drop out of college and pick up the Christian warrior arms. I fear he is setting us up for something that he would never, could never, and has never been a part of. So I look to someone like you who has put on a uniform, who has picked up a gun, and who has fought in a war. Is this a direction we want to go?
No, absolutely not. Look, if I'm elected and I go to DC, I hope that I'm put on the Armed Services Committee, because if there's ever a time that we're asked to go to war, to vote to go to war again, unless we absolutely have to go to war, unless it's absolutely the right thing to do, I don't care if it's Joe Biden, I don't care if it's Donald Trump, I don't care who it is, who the president is, I don't care what the party is, I will vote no every single time, because I've seen things over there. There are other soldiers that have come home, service members that have come home that have to bear the scars of war. There are other service members that did not come home. I never want to see another person have to put another person on the end of their knife sight and pull the trigger. That is not a road that I ever want to go down.
Yeah, now that's a huge difference. What you just said, you never want someone to be put in a position where they have to put someone in the line of sight. And this is a guy who, he seems to fetishize it. He seems to want it. He seems to be calling for it. I mean, I've seen videos of him shooting guns off and big guns off, claiming I've got a new attachment for my wheelchair and all of this stuff. Almost like, almost like it is some kind of weird, twisted fetish.
Yeah. And, I'll just say this, like I will be damned if the men and women who fought for our country and for those that didn't make it home, and for those, again, like I said, that bear the scars of war, will have sacrificed so much in vain for this country because of Madison Cawthorn. Now, he's talking about, attempting psychological warfare and instilling fear in Americans and dictating nationalism. Look, if I have to be the singular person to stand firm against this wave of his radical onslaught, then so be it. My service to this country, for me, is not over until I'm dead and buried in this ground. And I'll fight like hell with every fiber of my being to ensure that people like Madison Cawthorn do not stay in office, and that we correct the ship. Because I love this country, and I refuse to allow people's sacrifice to go in vain with him. And it's something interesting too, is at one point in his speech, he says that he's tired of having to say that he's a Republican. And, honestly, I've been giving that some serious thought. And you know what? I agree with him. He's not a Republican. This is not his country anymore. To me, he's a rhino. He is exactly the kind of thing that he tries to pin on other people like Adam Kinzinger. This person is a rhino. He's not a Republican. As a matter of fact, over the past several weeks, he has made so many other Republicans angry and frustrated in North Carolina that he's created this division. He's driven a wedge in the Republican Party to where longstanding Republicans say that they're embarrassed to have him in office representing North Carolina. So he's created an interesting battlefield for us over in NC-13.
And the hope is that he is ousted come next November. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Josh Remillard. Josh is a candidate for North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. That is the district currently being held by Madison Cawthorn, Mr. Holy Warrior. If you want to check out Josh's website, joshremillard.com, we'll get links out on social media how you can check out the work that he's doing. Now I go look. This guy's terrible. I think he started off, kind of off the deep end. I think he's gone full head further deep end. And personally, I don't think he cares if he loses because the right wing machine creates these little stars, and I think he's kind of drunk with stardom. So I don't know if how much of this is his true belief that he really is this holy warrior and all of this stuff, or how much of this is what the machine wants of him. This is him just following the leader. Either way, I don't know if I'm voting in that district. I want him. So what are you hearing from people as you're out knocking on doors? Because I know you're doing the shaking hands and kissing babies thing. What are you hearing?
It's interesting. I've actually heard several Republicans that I've run into, and I've even seen it in some of the news articles that there's several prominent Republicans that are interested in voting for a Democrat because they just don't want him in office. And so I work really hard every single day to make sure that when I'm talking to people on the other side of the aisle, that they understand that I'm not just throwing blows at Madison Cawthorn, because he is an existential threat to our country and our state. But the other thing too is once you get over that hurdle, what then? And I want people to know that I care about representing selflessly for this community and constantly. I mean, I've gone through 90% of the county so far in NC-13 and talking to people and asking them, like, what can I do for you in DC? Because I want to build a policy platform that's accurately representing this district, because that's exactly what I care about. And
it's about, and this is what I'm getting from you is the same thing that I believe. How can we help make people's lives better? Which leads me to the next question, because I don't actually know of anything that Madison Cawthorn has put his name on. Any legislation that's been put forth. I know nothing has been passed, but I don't know that there's anything that's been offered that would help people in his district, that would help people across this country. I don't know anything other than him running around the country making crazy statements.
You're right. I've looked into some of his some of the proposals that he's jumped on board with or proposed, and a lot of it has to do with building the wall. That's it. And I mean, I suppose that's an area of concern and anxiety for people on the right. And I guess to a certain degree, I understand that anxiety, but your job is more than just building the wall. Like, your job is to ensure that you look out for the welfare of the people of your district. That's it. That's the bigger issue. I mean, back, I think it was over the summer. That's when he missed the most votes out of any congressional representative. And he claimed it was because he was paying attention to his husbandly duties or whatever, but he was out, doing his honeymoon in Dubai, and partying it up and living the good life. And it's like, well, your job is to pass policies. On top of that, he was asked at one of our veteran forums in North Carolina, why he voted no on passing the veterans bill that would help veterans with a lot of their debts. And he said, sometimes they give us these really big books that have a lot of pages in them, and they don't give us a whole lot of time to read them. So I just voted no because, you never know if there's going to be a trap in there. And I just put my head in my hands. Like, are you kidding me right now?
That is the greatest line. There are books and they have pages in them. That is the best line. But there were books.
It was comedy hour. He's clown shoes, man. I can't believe him.
Wow.
I mean, since the dawn of our country, of our of our democracy, of our republic. Our founding fathers, they dealt with they dealt with big stacks of pages to write our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, like the very things that he thinks that he's a patriot about. These people had to do the work to make sure that these things were enacted, and he can't even be bothered to spend the money that he's given to have staffers.
And that's it.
Research the stuff for him.
And that's it. You don't even read it yourself. You tell staffers to read it and write you up one pagers so that you can read that one page. But here again, I go back to where we started in this. Dropped out of college, proud of the fact that he dropped out of college. And I look at, one of the people he pals around with, high school dropout Lauren Boebert. So is it surprising that the anti-education caucus are the ones who are saying, but there are books with pages that we didn't read. We just did what our leadership told us to do.
Honestly, it's not surprising. It's not surprising. I think that he's hanging out probably a little bit too much with Josh Hawley, because I noticed sort of a pattern, things that Josh Hawley says or had said in the past. I start to see Madison Cawthorn, sort of parrot. So yeah, there's definitely some interesting things going on there, and yeah, he's definitely a puppet for whoever's pulling the strings.
Yeah, and this speech really brought that out. I know he's always flirted with the religion and the violence and all of that. He dove full into the theocratic war and all of this, which very frightening to me. So for me, the idea is, quickest way to deal with this problem, throw the bum to the street. And I like the work that you're doing. I like some of your policy positions. I hope folks will check out the website, joshremillard.com. If you had like a minute, what's the elevator pitch for folks?
Look, my whole life has been a fight. I've fought for this country. I've had fighter jobs. My heart is here. And I'm going to fight to make this district thrive on healthcare, make it thrive in the economy, for jobs, bringing jobs to the district, and then fight for our veterans. But I can't do this without you. I need everyone out there who's paying attention to volunteer and to, if you have money, donate to the campaign, because we're going to need it when it comes down time for us to go toe to toe with Madison Cawthorn.
Yeah, and the website, joshremillard.com. Like I said, we'll get that out on social media. And it does come down to some money as well. Look, I know candidates who are great candidates. If they don't have the resources to compete, especially with the cost of airtime for radio and TV, they're done in the water. And especially someone like Madison Cawthorn, who's going to get tons of theocrat money, and the billionaire class seems to like. Very interesting stuff. So joshremillard.com. Josh, great talking with you. Keep up the great work. I hope you'll come back and share some more as the insanity continues.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you so much, Rick. It certainly means a lot.
Appreciate the time. joshremillard.com. Make sure you check out that website. Seriously, I mean, this guy scares me, as does the Josh Hawleys and the rest of them, because they truly do want that holy war to make the rest of us heathens, even though we do believe in God and go to church and all that, but to make us pay, because we're not like them. Pages with books. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1910. That was the day a catastrophic fire broke out in the Chicago Union stockyards. It claimed the lives of 21 firefighters and was considered the worst in the line of duty tragedy, with fatalities in fire service until September 11th, 2001. The fire broke out in warehouse number 7 of the Morris Beef Company. By the time the fire was extinguished, 26 hours later, 50 engine companies and 7 hook and ladder companies had been called to the scene. They arrived by horse-drawn steam engine and trucks. Fire hydrants nearby had been shut off previously over concerns of freezing. This, coupled with animal fat and grease throughout the warehouse, contributed to the quick spread of the fire. Railway cars and other buildings also surrounded the warehouse. This made it more difficult for firefighters to access it. Soon after they arrived, the building exploded and a wall collapsed on the firefighters. Their comrades frantically rushed to dig them out of the scorching hot rubble with their bare hands. But the explosion had caused a second fire in a nearby warehouse. It took another day before the debris had cooled enough to resume recovery efforts. Various causes for the fire have been considered, from faulty electrical outlets to the bursting of ammonia pipes. 19 widows and 35 orphaned children were left behind just before Christmas. Directly behind the Union Stockyard Gate at the intersection of Peoria and Exchange Streets is a memorial statue commemorating the tragic loss of firefighters' lives. At the time it was dedicated in 2004, the names of 530 firefighters were carved along its base.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, looks like the Unabomber's not in good health. Remember him? What was his name? Ted Kaczynski? He was, I guess he pled guilty back in 98 to mail bombings, if you remember. He had this really long manifesto against modern technology and all kinds of stuff. But evidently he's been moved from the Supermax federal prison in Florence, Colorado, to a medical prison somewhere, which generally means closing in on the end. Remember the good old days when crazy people outside of Congress were trying to destroy the country? How things have changed. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So, any thoughts on Kaczynski? I think you were in office sometime around then, weren't you?
What year was Kaczynski?
I guess it would have been the late 90s.
I was sworn in January of '95.
Yeah, so he was still mailing bombs around.
Yeah, he was from out in Oregon.
I think it was right? Montana, wasn't it?
Where was it?
Montana?
Somewhere out there.
I think he lived in a shed somewhere.
In a cabin, in a crappy cabin somewhere. Yeah. I know he was smart.
No, wicked smart. But, you remember the good old days when it was only people outside of Congress who wanted to destroy the country?
Right, that's true. Yeah, Timothy McVeigh, Ted Kaczynski,
yeah,
right.
It's crazy. Now you got people like Madison Cawthorn running around saying, we're going to Civil War, we'll win. Quit college. Could you ever imagine, in your years, could have ever imagined a sitting member of Congress telling college kids to drop out of college?
No. I have advised people when I was in Congress, and sometimes people would yell at me for this. I would advise people if they asked me about going to college and they had interest in the trades, I would say, take your choice of what you like to do.
Yep.
But if you're being pressured to go to college and you don't want to go to college, but you happen to like electrical, plumbing, or drywalling, do that. I would give that type of advice. But I highly doubt I would tell anybody that's sitting, in college, well, I think you just need to leave.
Yeah, just drop out.
Right.
It's all a sham. And not surprising because he's a college dropout himself. So there is that. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the craziness going on, especially have you been following this rage fest out in Arizona?
No, what is the rage
what
fest?
is it? It's something with this Turning Point USA, some kind of America Fest or whatever they're calling it. It's another one of these CPAC type groups. It's America Fest, put on by Turning Points USA. They've brought in all of the top lunatics to give their speech. Yesterday, we talked. It was the day before. That Jesse Waters from Fox News was calling on, someone to ambush Fauci with a kill shot and all kinds of weird stuff. Now this guy, doing the hey, drop out of college, let's start a civil war. Fun times.
Now, when did this start with? Is this new?
It started over the weekend. They had
so this is the first time they've had it?
No, I think Charlie Kirk's group, Turning Point USA, has had these kind of things before.
Oh, Charlie Kirk, okay.
I think they've had these kind of gatherings before in a number of places. This one's just getting a little bit more attention because it's a little bit bigger. And, they've brought in some of the stars, like, evidently Kyle Rittenhouse now has his own theme music for when he enters a room. And you had Boebert and Cawthorn and Waters and a whole bunch of the folks who throw the bombs and rile people up. So they came to give their little song and dance. And this is some of the highlights.
Well, I knew that Waters was getting some heat because he was telling people to ambush Fauci. I knew that.
Right.
I just didn't know what event he was at saying that.
Yeah, that was this America Fest put on by them.
Okay.
And for me, it's not the fact that he was saying to put Fauci on the spot. It's the fact that I truly believe the rhetoric that they use this rhetoric heaped in violence, ambush, kill shot. We want a civil war. We'll win. We've got the Lord on our side. This is all stuff that I believe they truly want, and they want to say this stuff out loud. And the other stuff is just a qualifier. So if they get in trouble, they go, no, I really meant this. I don't believe they really meant this at all.
I think they have to be people have to be careful. They have to be careful of their language. Go get them to the Capitol. They have to be very careful of what they say in the sense of if they're going to be used to incite violence against somebody. I mean, they can stand there and say Fauci's wrong. Fauci's crazy. I mean, they can say whatever they want, in that vein. But if you say something like, ambush him, that's clearly a word that you really don't want to use.
Yeah, and throw kill shot in on top of that. And I think you send the message that you really mean, and not the one of, hey, just get him on videotape. I at least that's my view.
Right.
But here's the weird thing. You brought up the perfect point. Go get him. I look at what's going on right now in Congress with this January 6th committee, and the fact that yesterday we talked about Scott Perry, my congressman, refusing to come in for an interview and cooperate. Today, Jim Jordan has been asked to come in and be interviewed. I'm assuming he's going to say no if he hasn't already. It seems to me that finally we're starting to look in some right places. I'm curious your thought.
Well, I think that they need to. Obviously, they have some information. I think the committee does, and there's been news reports, like with the congressman from Pennsylvania about contacting Meadows and what they've said. So they have, whether they have provided their phone records or not, they have certain information. The committee, and it's information that's precarious, or it's information that seems to be obviously on a level that it shouldn't have been from a member of Congress, and they want to ask them about it. So I don't know why they wouldn't interview the committee. In fact, I'll tell you what my thought was this morning when I was looking at the story. Why are they treating it any different than an ethics committee inquiry? If you're called to the ethics committee, you just don't say, I'm not going. You go.
Right.
If you're asked about something, accused of something, or they want information, ethics-wise, they ask you, you go. It can be done in a private screening, which I think is what they wanted to do. They wanted to sit down and talk with them. So why would this be treated any different than an ethics inquiry?
No.
In fact, I thought today if the committee wanted to, they could just go file an ethics committee to ask. Actually, the committee's giving them a break by just having what I call an informal question and answer session with them.
Now, it's not that they I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that this is not something that they don't already know.
That's what I'm saying. There's something that they have, and they want clarification on it or input on it from Jordan's end or whoever else.
Yeah.
They want clarification, of what they meant. It's obviously not just something where an email was sent or a text was sent that said, wow, can you help stop this?
Yeah, wow,
there's
nice
something
insurrection.
else.
Yeah, none of that. No, as I said yesterday, like any parent, as I tell my kids, if I'm asking you a question, I already know the answer. I'm just seeing if you're going to lie to me. and how and how much trouble you're going to get in when you do lie.
Right. And like I said, why would this be treated any different in the minds of the members of being asked by the Ethics Committee or the January 6th Committee? It's really all the same. There's a process there. It's not unusual. And like I said, they could actually say, treat it like an Ethics Committee inquiry. And you don't refuse the Ethics Committee. Yeah. So why would you refuse the January 6th Committee?
So is it that you don't or you can't?
You can, but if you refuse, you're going to have repercussions.
And what would the repercussions be if you refuse to go to an Ethics Committee?
Well, if you refuse to go to the Ethics Committee, eventually you could be found in violation, of the rules of responding to an Ethics Committee inquiry. And I would assume you could be, censured or possibly, expelled from the House.
Wow. Now, we've talked before, about the, Democrats going down certain paths. Is this a path that you see worth going down? I know we both disagree. We both agree that you shouldn't be throwing people off committees and doing some of the things that Democrats have done. But in this vein, would you go that far?
No, that's an interesting question. I would say that that you can't refuse the Ethics Committee. You can't sit in the Congress. And I keep saying Ethics Committee, but if the January 6th Committee can't get a response, they then could take it as an ethics inquiry. They could.
Okay.
There's no reason they couldn't. Any member of the January 6th Committee can file that through the Ethics Committee. Once that happens, that member has to comply. And if they don't comply, then they would face possible expulsion from the House. That would be a different ballgame than what I haven't liked, which is for a person to be removed, from a committee without the ethics process. Now, I did say at one point in time, if anybody who's been removed, GOSAR or anybody from a committee had went through the ethics process and then removed, I thought that was fine.
Yeah, no,
I just didn't like the process of how it went.
Right, I agree with you on this.
Right. I think the answer is that they could be censured or removed if they don't follow the process of the House, which is an inquiry from a committee. And if one of the January 6th Committee individuals wants to take it as an ethics response because they won't meet with them, I think it's totally within their jurisdiction to do it.
So given that reality, I'm now thinking, what Scott Perry's options are. Is it better to go through the committee, be maybe possibly censured for not coming in and testifying or being interviewed, possibly being expelled, or coming in and having the truth laid out that you were part of this coup attempt, that you were and possibly knowingly helping them to set the table to go forward on that PowerPoint treason?
Well, possibly if he had only one of two choices, potentially going through the ethics process, being found guilty by the Ethics Committee, censured and or removed, because there's options out there, or to go into the committee and talk to them, I would assume he would want to go into the committee and say his piece.
Yeah, because what I'm getting from this,
that's what I would assume.
Maybe you've got a better handle on this than I do. The way I'm seeing this is the way I think what they're trying to establish is, did Scott Perry throw Jeffrey Clark into this to be the acting AG so that acting AG can go forward on all of the things that were in that 2-page memo from Trump's attorney, from the 36-page PowerPoint thing, to be able to go through and not certify the election and overturn it by using the Department of Justice, and then obviously all of the things that were supposed to happen afterwards. I think that's what part of it is. Is that how you understand it?
Yes, absolutely, and that puts him in a totally different category than a member who makes a comment to the chief of staff about what's going on, or says, I think they stole the election. If that's the process that he was going through to help in that selection to overturn an official election, that's a whole different world for him.
Now, the weird thing for me is he did two things with his refusal. He tried to claim that the committee's illegitimate, Therefore, I'm not going to participate with something that's illegitimate. And then he did the deflection, like a 2-year-old who broke the lamp, and say, well, but Johnny broke the pitcher. The deflection and the trying to delegitimize without actually going to what the issue was. That tells me there's something there.
Well, yes, because first of all, when they say the committee's not legitimate, that's like saying that I'm a Republican and I don't view Speaker Pelosi as the legitimate Speaker of the House. Therefore, I don't follow any procedures that she decides because I don't believe her and I don't like her, so she's not legitimate. That's the same type of theory. He may not like the January 6th committee, and the Republicans may not have put anybody on it, which I think is a grave mistake.
Stupid mistake.
Frankly. And he may not believe that in his mind it's a legitimate process. He knows it is a House-constituted committee. Yeah. Therefore, whether you like it or you don't, it's legitimate.
He's turned
just
into
like
one
the
of those
ethics committee. Whether a person says, "Wow, that's all biased," it's a legitimate committee of the House.
Yeah, well, I hope they do that. I hope that is on the agenda, and that's the direction we go. Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend. Great insight.
Thank you.
And look, the ethics committee, I hope, is the next place. Maybe that's what has to happen. But what's weird, and again, Perry is one of these guys who, as I've said all along, has never came off in public as the absolute crazy. Has always been, flash those military credentials, God-fearing Christian constitutionalist. And now we find out what I've always feared all along, fairly dangerous. And weirdly, this whole, it's delegitimate. It's not trying to delegitimize it. Kind of reeks of those sovereign citizens who get pulled over by the police. I don't have to show you anything. I'm a sovereign citizen. I don't recognize you. And putting their hands over their ears. Kind of reminds me of that. Very bizarre times. But the ethics committee is most certainly an interesting path that I'm hoping they start speeding this up, especially if Jim Jordan, especially if he refuses. And as I said earlier, I wanted him on the committee. I know that they made a calculated decision to make sure that he wasn't on the committee, which is what gave the Republicans the cover to say, well, if we can't have our guy, we're not putting anyone on, which again was the stupidest thing they could have done. I wanted Jim Jordan there so that there was no question that he would show up because he's already there. Same reason I wanted Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Education Committee. Anytime you talk about needing education funding, I wanted Lauren Boebert on that committee as well, so I can go Exhibit A, and Dropout B. That to me is where we go. Anyway, man, can you believe what's happened to our Congress? Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media, Twitter @Rick Smith Show, Facebook, YouTube, like, subscribe, share, comment, all of that stuff. All kinds of ways to participate. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you get out and finish up your Christmas shopping. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
In 1972, I was part of a nationwide campaign that came close to getting the U.S. Senate to reject Earl Butz, Richard Nixon's choice for Secretary of Agriculture. A coalition of grassroots farmers, consumers, and public interest organizations teamed up with progressive senators to undertake the almost impossible challenge of defeating the cabinet nominee. The 51-44 Senate vote was so close because we were able to expose Butz as Bud Ugly. We brought the abusive power of corporate agribusiness into the public consciousness for the first time. We had won a moral victory, but it turned out to be a curse and a blessing. First, the curse. Butts had risen to prominence in the world of agriculture by devoting himself to the corporate takeover of the global food economy. He openly promoted the preeminence of middlemen food manufacturers over family farmers. Agriculture is no longer a way of life, he barked. It's a business. He instructed farmers to get big or get out, and proceeded to shove tens of thousands of them out by promoting an export-based, corporate-run food economy. Adapt, he warned, or die. The ruination of farms and rural communities, Butts added, releases people to do something useful in our society. This is Jim Hightower saying, the curse of Butts, however, spun off a blessing. Small farmers and food artisans practically threw up at the resulting Twinkie-ization of America's food. They were sickened that nature's own contribution to human culture was being turned into another plasticized product of corporate profiteers. They threw themselves into creating and sustaining a viable alternative, linking locally with consumers, environmentalists, community activists, marketers, and others. The Good Food Rebellion has since sprouted, spread, and blossomed from coast to coast. To find farmers markets and other expressions of this movement right where you live, go to localharvest.org.
Hightower's commentary is brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown. From Wall Street to Washington, this monthly newsletter reveals who's doing what to whom and why. Check it out, Hightower.